Welcome to this week's video tutorial on performing what-if analysis. You can use this feature in Excel to analyze financial data with the goal of maximizing profits. I have Cycle Green open and will review the table on the income statement sheet. Total revenue is shown as the number of bikes sold times the average sales price per bike. Next, expenses are broken down into variable and fixed expenses. Variable expenses vary according to how many bikes are sold and consist of materials and manufacturing costs. Fixed expenses will generally stay the same each month and consist of salaries and overhead costs. When expenses are subtracted from revenue, net income for the period is revealed. We'll assume this is the company's monthly net income of $125,000, which is also called profit. If I change the number of bikes sold for the month from 570 to 500, I can see the revenue, expenses, and net income decreases. Now net income is only $55,000. Conversely, if I raise the number of bikes sold to 600, the total revenue increases and the net income increases to $155,000. I'll go back and change it to the 570. If I want to find the break-even point, or when the net income equals 0, I can use the Goal Seek tool in Excel. Simply click on the Data tab, go to What If Analysis, and click on Goal Seek. I want to set cell B26 to the value of 0 by changing cell Units Sold, which is B4. Then I'll click OK. You can see that B4 changes to 445 bikes sold, and that gives me a net income of 0, where revenue equals expenses. I'll change it back to 570 bikes. I can create a data table to look at the net income given a list of different unit quantities. These unit quantities, or units sold, are considered the variable in this table, as it is the value that changes down the column. I'll fill in cell references in the top row of the table. Units sold is going to be B4, revenue is going to equal B24, expenses is going to equal B25, and net income is going to equal B26. Now the variable, which is units sold, will begin at 300 units and go to 350, 400, and I'm going to include the break-even point of 445. Then we'll add 500, 550, and we can keep that pattern going by auto-filling down to 700. Now I'm ready to fill in the table. I'll select B4 through G13, go to What If Analysis, and click on Data Table. My variable is in the column, so I'll click on it and click on B4, which is the variable that's changing down the column, and then I'll click OK. Notice Excel fills in the data table with the corresponding data. Here I see my break-even point of 445 units sold, and as the units sold increases, the net income increases. I can format this with commas and change the negatives to red by going to More Number Formats, clicking on Currency, and then clicking on Red for negative. To chart this data, I'll select the range D3 to F13. This will give me two lines of revenue and expenses with the units sold across the horizontal axis. I'll go to Insert, Scatter Chart, and Scatter Chart with Straight Lines. I'll go ahead and delete the chart title and move it down below the break-even analysis. Here I can change the horizontal axis by double-clicking on it, going to Access Options, and making the minimum bound 300 and the maximum 700. Then I can format the vertical axis by setting the minimum to 600,000, and the maximum is already set at 1.6 million. Now I can see where revenue meets expenses, where the two lines cross. I can also format that point by clicking on the paint can and then marker options. I'll go ahead and select a built-in option with a circle type. The data table is dynamic, meaning if I lower the average price per unit sold, I am lowering the overall revenue, which means my break-even point will be higher. For example, if I change the average selling price per unit from $2,100 to $1,800, I'll notice that my break-even point is somewhere in between 600 and 650 units. And my break-even chart will show that. That's around where the two lines cross. I'll go back to a price per unit of 2100. So instead of changing the price per unit manually, I can put it into a two-variable data table. I'll go to the net income analysis and enter my variables. We'll try an average price per unit of 1900, 2000, 2100, 2200, and 2300. And I'll go ahead and copy the units sold from column D. Highlight it, copy it, bring it over to column I, and go to paste. The result cell in the corner of the table tells Excel what the table result will be. I'll reference B26 because I want it to show the net income. Then I'll hit enter. I could format this cell so it's not confusing to the reader. So I'll go ahead and right-click on it, go down to Format Cells, click on Custom, and right under Type, I'll put in quotes, Units Sold, and then OK. This makes a little bit more sense. Now I'll select I4 to N13 and use Data Table to fill in my table. Go to What If Analysis, down to Data Table, and for the row input, it's going to be the average price per unit, and the column cell input is going to be units sold. And I'll click OK. Excel fills in the table and still shows that break-even point at 445 units with a selling price of $2,100. I'm going to go ahead and format those cells by making the average price per unit in currency with no decimal places, and then giving comma style to the rest of the numbers, and going to format cells so that my negative numbers will be in red. Notice that my net income is negative when the company has sold from 300 to 400 bikes a month, but then goes into the positive when you sell about 445 bikes at $2,100 and up. I can chart this data by selecting I5 through N13 and going to Insert, Scatter Chart, and moving the chart below the data. I'm going to go ahead and make the chart the same size as the data. I'll take off the chart title, change the horizontal axis by double-clicking on it, and making my minimum bound 300 with the maximum of 700. I need some labels for my series, so I'll go ahead and put the legend on the right-hand side, and then I'll go to Select Data to name each of the series in the legend. I can edit the first series name by giving it a name of 1900. I'll go ahead and click on that. Series 2, I'll give a name of 2000. Series 3, 2100, 4, 2200, and 5, 2300. Now my chart makes a little bit more sense. When I sell bikes at $1,900, at 300 units, the net income is in the negative, and finally goes into the positive after selling about 550 bikes. This concludes the video tutorial on data tables and performing what-if analysis. Join me next time when I develop financial scenarios from this data.